Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm your host, Megan, and joined again by my co-host, Jen. Hey, Jen. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy to be here like always.
Yes, and we have a short week ahead of us. I mean, this is not going to get released for a while, but spoiler, we're Thanksgiving week is in front of us. So it's a busy week for all.
It's a busy week of short days and lots of food.
Yes, and I'm excited. Do you do like any sort of turkey trot type? Are you a turkey trot family?
We are a turkey trot family. Yes, we'll do it on Thursday morning.
I figured you seem like a turkey trot family.
It's not too far. It's about 1.8 miles is what we determined it's going to be. So it's a quick turkey trot, but we're forcing everyone to get out there.
Wait. Is this a family organized search?
Yes. Oh, yes, it is. It's the whole family we go into it. Yep.
Interesting. I'm like, you're not just joining a pre-organized one. You do your own.
Why would we do that? We need more work, you know?
Well, I love it. Well, today I'm super excited because we're joined by Kimberly Vaughn. And Kimberly's just an absolute pleasure to chat with. We had talked to her a few weeks ago when we were chatting about this podcast. And you had met her at a conference a few weeks ago, right?
Yes, I met her at the Litigation Management Symposium in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and we got grouped together for like a mini group project. And she is just so dynamic and so interesting. And as soon as she started talking, I was like, I'm going to tag her for the podcast as soon as we're done with this conversation.
Yes. And a good tag at that. So, she has so much to share. She practices as an attorney and now is in the insurance world and has moved her way up pretty steadily and quickly to the higher up the chain. So I'm very interested to hear about her story. So with that, let's bring her in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.
Good morning, Kimberly. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm so happy to have you. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Good morning. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
And
I will say, go ahead.
I was going to say, most of our listeners join via a listening platform, but if there's ever one that you want to watch on YouTube, it is this one, because Kimberly's background is the nicest home office I have ever seen, and I just want to take a picture of it and give it to a designer and tell them to replicate it here.
Yes. Yeah, Jen, that was exactly what I was going to say.
That is very, very kind. Thank you. I made sure it was nice and tidy for today.
Yeah. And Jen is currently talking about redecorating or decorating her home. So she's definitely taking note. So if you were to ever join us again and Jen's home office looks similar to yours, you're going to know that you were the inspiration. And it's a compliment.
Yes. No, thank you. I am very complimented. Thank you so much.
And I'm totally gonna sidetrack, but how often are you sitting in those beautiful chairs? Do you do you sit there and read, or what do you what are you using them for on a weekly
so
basis?
I don't typically sit in them to read, but I do if I'm on the actual phone, which I realize we're all not on the phone very much, right? We're usually on Teams or whatever, chosen platform. But I will sit in those chairs when I talk on the phone because it's more comfortable than my desk chair. It's a change of scenery in a way, right? Kind of move around the room. But I actually have a chair right out in the next room that I like to read in because it's angled just right. It's actually from IKEA. It's their big wingback chair. And it is, I don't know, just that right amount of degrees. And it's just really, I like that chair for reading.
I might have to get you to send me a link when we get off of this podcast. I'm looking for a new reading chair. We had a tree fall onto our sunroom last summer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And all of the glass got into the furniture. So just to be safe, I got rid of all of it. And I'm looking for just a big, comfy chair to stick in there so I can sit and read in the sunroom. So.
Great. Well, and now your podcast is sponsored by IKEA. So
yeah. We're here, IKEA. We're here for you. Let us know what you need. Happy to plug it. I have lots of IKEA stuff in my home. Happy to plug it all. Well, Kimberly, it's such a pleasure to have you on. Like, we had talked a few weeks ago and we had an awesome conversation, not recorded, that it was oftentimes like when we have those chats, I'm like, dang it, I wish we recorded it because it was such a good chat, but it's also some good foreshadowing to how lively our conversation will be for the real deal. So I'm really looking and one thing we always talk about with guests, we talked about during our pre-recording chat is your path into claims. Everyone's is so different, and often not linear and often not planned. So I'm curious, can you share what your path into claims was?
Yeah, absolutely. So like many folks, of a certain age, right, we didn't necessarily end up in insurance or in claims kind of intentionally. Now, I think we talked about the fact that now there are programs at these schools, at colleges, universities, where these young people they're getting into it by intention, which is really, really exciting. But I kind of came about it in an unexpected way. I, started out practicing law and was in Chicago and working and, trying cases and doing all kinds of things. And eventually got to the point where my now husband and I, we had gotten engaged. We had been dating long distance for about 4 years. And we decided that we would be very traditional and we would move to the same state when we got married and live in a shared household. And so it was a matter of sort of looking for new work. And as part of that, I worked with a career coach and I certainly was applying for legal jobs. I'm licensed in both Illinois and Michigan, but her idea was to say, hey, have you thought about something maybe law adjacent, which insurance very, very much is. And so started looking for some roles at insurance companies and found my way to my current company. And very, very fortunately, by the way, I really am lucky, found a great place to work. And it has been truly a fascinating career. I've been at it now for 12 and a half years in claims. And really, there is never a dull moment. It is a very, very interesting line of work.
So you have been at your company and in claims for 12 and a half years, and you've made that ascension that you've made to your current role in that short amount of time?
I did, yeah. 12 and a half years, started in 2013 and had a lot of different roles in my organization and been very, very fortunate to try a lot of different things, get to learn a lot of new things. But yeah, and now I need to lead the claims organization. And it has been, frankly, probably the biggest honor of my career, certainly so far, and really just honored to be able to lead, hopefully fearlessly and competently and effectively, all the team members in our claims organization here.
I am super impressed. I mean, I handled claims for about 8 years, and I think I went from like claim examiner 1 to claim examiner 4 in 8 years. This is when you first joined your company. What was your original position?
So I started in a job, at least that we don't have anymore, it was a claims corporate claims analyst, I think was maybe the official title, and it really was. It ended up very shortly thereafter moving into a role that we still do have today, which is a corporate consultant role. And it's really, back in the day, I think a lot of companies called it things like home office examiner. So it was really a team member that was there to help our claim handlers primarily and their frontline leaders on claims that were complex or maybe something legally unique happening. Something kind of, a little bit out of the ordinary, maybe claims that have higher values, and just helping them talk through how they might handle it, making sure they have the authority they need to reserve and resolve the file. So yeah, that is where I started.
So when you were practicing, were you doing a lot of coverage work then?
I did not. I've never done coverage work.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for coverage attorneys. They're really important to the work that we do, but I was never one of them. I represented insurance companies, but in more, just the run of the mill, everyday claim adjudication and claim litigation matters.
Wow. So then how was that transition kind of going into the insurance company from what you were doing?
It was a big change. And it's funny because I think just like adjusters, lawyers have very specific things, right, that they do as part of their work and an area that they need to be an expert in. And I think adjusters or claim handlers and lawyers have very complementary functions, right? And they work really well together. I know our relationship, now that I'm at the insurance company, our relationship with our lawyers is a really important and trusted relationship that we have. But I learned a lot about things that maybe, and frankly, for good reason, was sort of none of my business when I was in practice, and things like reserving, right? The financial side of that. As lawyers, I think we see, the settlement part of it, or how much is this case valued at? It's a really important thing that lawyers obviously will give their opinion on. But to kind of see the other side of it, which is the financial obligation that insurance companies have to make sure that we're always appropriately reserved. That is the biggest liability on any insurance company's balance sheet, of course, it's probably all listeners to this podcast would know. And so really getting to see that side of things and understand that part, which was something that as a lawyer, I wasn't involved with, I shouldn't have been involved with, right? That's not a thing that lawyers get involved with, but it was really interesting to kind of learn that perspective. And then also the way that insurance companies engage with their agents and their policyholders is different than the relationship that attorneys have with policyholders as their client.
Yes.
And so I think those were all things that certainly were new to me when I started working for an insurance company. And, they were very interesting, but ways to kind of think about how this larger picture, right? The larger strategy of what it means to have insurance and how all the different parties interact was definitely new and interesting.
Yeah. And so how long were you in that? Oh, sorry, Meghan, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So how long were you in that initial position before you kind of moved on to something else?
Yeah, so I was in that role. I was in the corporate consultant role in the analyst role for about a year, corporate consultant role for about 2 years. And then I became the line of business leader for workers' compensation. So that was kind of my first role in leadership. And that's, then was in a series of different leadership roles moving on from there.
Well, one thing about the reserves, though, like I do think that is something that attorneys need to have a better understanding of if they don't already, because how, not that you get involved in making reserve recommendations. I don't advise that, but just the I remember being a young attorney and reading, claims notes and seeing like this file is reserved at blah, 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 and having no clue what that actually meant on the carrier side. And I just think the general knowledge as to what you're reporting and the ripple effect of the exposure that you're reporting and everything that you're telling your adjuster and thereby the carrier, impact that has on how the adjuster will reserve it and the importance of that reserve. That, early on, I feel like I was just like pulling numbers out of the air, because I was younger and I didn't have an idea. And thankfully I had partners who were overseeing the work that I was doing, but I didn't have a full appreciation until the impact those numbers have on the individual that they're being reported to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think probably a lot of attorneys, and certainly those that are earlier in their career would hopefully agree with, right? That is something that feels like a little bit of a mystery when you think about for your carrier clients. I do think it's a good thing to understand. One of my number one pet peeves about lawyers, and it's a pet peeve now that I run an insurance or a claims organization, but I will say, and I don't think I appreciated sort of the impact of it when I was in practice, but my number one pet peeve is lawyers that say, well, I don't have enough information to tell you what I think this case is worth yet. And my response usually, and maybe it's a little flippant and aggressive, but is, then what am I paying you for? What are we paying you for? The adjusters have to have an idea of what a case is worth, and it varies by organization, but let's say within the first 30 days of the file, being created at the insurance company. So for a lawyer to come at some point after that in the life cycle of the file and say, well, I need more information, I always struggle with that, because that's not to say that you don't ever get to change your mind or update your valuation, right, as new information comes in. But to kind of give this answer of, well, I have no idea, I'll let you know, is not acceptable. And certainly our claim handlers do it every single day with every claim, right? Even those that aren't litigated, the claim is worth something. And it is really that experience, whether it's your own because you've been doing it long enough, or it's, working with your, claim handling colleagues, your frontline leaders, your attorneys, trying to understand really how should this case be valued. And so one of the things I've done, I've been lucky enough to be asked by a law firm to come and present to their associates and explain sort of the carrier perspective. What is it like? What are the things that I and my team members look at to really think about what does it mean to be a good lawyer and a helpful lawyer to us, and kind of the type of lawyer that we really see as trusted advisors, and just really having a more general understanding of what the financial obligations of the insurance company are, I think is a big part of being able to be that kind of trusted advisor role.
So we actually do that training for our associates. Like I said, I handled claims for quite a few years. And then we have another attorney who handled claims for 25 years. He worked at the Hartford for 25 years. And so we put together a presentation that we give to all the associates, because when I left practice to go into claims and I start learning all that stuff, just as you were saying, it's like, oh, now it makes sense, right? I wish I knew this when I was doing it back then. So we try to make sure that they know. But now that I know that you do that, can you give us a couple of your top trade secrets as to what you expect from your lawyers? Maybe I can throw it into our presentation. I'm doing it later today.
Yeah, no, I think it's really basic, and it's probably stuff I would suspect you already have. Is number one, being timely. I mean, that is the number one thing. Nothing makes my claim handlers' lives more difficult than, especially if they end up in a meeting with me, for example, let's say it's a really big claim, and they'll say, well, I asked the lawyer for that X time ago, whatever, days, weeks, months, and, I'm still waiting for it. Or I followed up 2 or 3 times, I haven't heard back. That is kiss of death. And, like in any organization, I know lawyers by name because they're amazing lawyers. And I know lawyers by name because they're not amazing lawyers, or better yet, because I've requested that they be removed from our panel, right? So it's that kind of thing of, you want to be on the list, or you want to have your name known for being a good team member. It's really what it is, right? We're all one big team. We're all driving toward the same, result, outcome, resolution. So to be in that situation where you're being timely, I think is one of the most important things. I think the other thing is having that early conversation, early on the assignment is to say, to the adjuster, the claim handler, what is the most important thing that you need from me on this file? What would make our partnership on this file more productive? And you have adjusters and claim handlers that you work with all the time over and over again. And so maybe that question would get old after a while. But I think especially if you're working with somebody new, or you're working with an adjuster that you don't work with very often, having that conversation and just saying, what can I do, is good. The other thing, I think attorneys for us can kind of be some eyes and ears. If we have a team member on our side who is not performing to expectations, and we're not getting you information that you need to do your job, we need to know about that. And I know it feels a little bit like tattling, but ultimately, that's really important. And when you think about it, I think as a lawyer, when you think about it as being in service to your client, the policyholder, it becomes a little bit easier to provide that feedback if necessary, because it really is ultimately about protecting the policyholder and making sure that you have what you need to do your job as effectively as possible. And it doesn't mean that we're going to fire that person or put them on a plan, right? Sometimes it's simple feedback of, hey, this lawyer needs this, that, and the other thing. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, great. Well, now, let's do it moving forward. So it is also about us just giving each other feedback so that we can all be better at our jobs.
Absolutely. And sometimes that feedback is hard.
Yeah.
I got a haircut a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't really like the way that she angled it. And so I was too embarrassed to tell her. And I just wanted a blunt cut. I didn't want an angry bob. And so my son was getting his hair cut over the weekend. And I said to the woman who cuts his hair, I was like, can you fix this? Can you just pick it? And she's like, I can fix it, but Jen, you need to tell your hairdresser, because they're not going to get better. And if you don't give them feedback, I'm like, but it's so embarrassing. I couldn't tell her. I mean,
I'm with you on the hair stuff. I'm always like, looks great, wonderful.
Yeah.
Just get me out of here.
Yes.
But it's the same thing. How is anyone going to improve? And I didn't really think about it that way until she put it that way to me. Like, I would be happy to get that feedback, because the next time I'm going to know maybe to ask that question. Like, what do you want, an angled bob? Do you want a blunt bob? And so unless we tell people, they're never going to grow.
Well, and not unlike your relationship with your legal partners, right? When you're a carrier or a TPA and your relationship with your lawyers, it should be a really valued, trusted relationship, is also your relationship with your hair styling professional, because that is, I mean, you think about all the time you spend in the chair and the things you might share with that person. It's really not all that different.
Right.
Yeah.
There should be
they're like a
hair
therapist.
client confidentiality sometimes.
Yeah.
That's the thing we should have met. Maybe, I don't know, but so.
Yes.
No, but it's,
Although
I
have
do.
to, I'm going to sidetrack on your hair though, Jen, because you're like, I think I'm going to go copy your angled haircut that you dislike so much, because I liked it and I need a haircut. And I was like, I don't know, it looks good, Jen. We might be matching, but maybe that's good. We're matching haircuts for the podcast.
Yeah, my daughter, so I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she told me I look like that mom on Dance Moms. I don't know if you've ever seen Dance Moms, but this woman has like a very like severe, like mid 2010 like kind of haircut. And she told me I look like her, and I think I couldn't get it out of my head, and so I had to.
But the bob is in.
The bob is in. I mean,
Jenna Hager got one, and it was.
Well, if Jenna did it.
Seriously.
And she looks great, but no, it's still bobbing. It's just a little bit more straight instead of a severe angle.
Yeah. Well, when I come back with my angled bob, you'll know where my inspiration was.
I also think of anybody who is a professional feedback giver without any, couching or smoothing of the edges is probably a 13-year-old girl, would be my guess. So yeah. I also think that, I don't want to say consider the source. I don't want to say your daughter was wrong. I don't know what your hair looked like, but also like she is definitely not going to smooth the edges of that message if she's like any other 13-year-old I ever met, or was for that matter at one point in my life. So.
Very, very fair point. Whereas when the feedback's coming from somebody and coming from a better place, then it could be a little bit, as you said, somebody could couch it or massage it a little bit better to deliver it, perhaps with a little more dignity.
There you go.
But I do like your point though about being upfront at the outset of a new file and, talking to the adjuster or the claims professional as to like, what's your goal here? New or old, I had a new case come in the other week with a new client. And, when I was on the phone with her, I was like, I flat out had that same conversation. Like, what is your end goal here? Like, what are you looking for us to accomplish? Sorry, my thing went out. But it was a very important conversation to have, because what I thought in my head, what I thought the end goal was very different from what they were looking for. So had I not asked that question, I probably would have proceeded in the way that I saw it going, and which is similar to what they wanted, but they wanted a very specific thing in their end goal, which I didn't know about without asking.
Yeah. I think it's part of that financial stewardship obligation, right? And member of the claims organization is we, as I like to sometimes say, right, we're sort of the tip of the spear when we think about financial stewardship of the organization. We, it requires a lot of money to adjudicate claims. And so I think to be on the same page from the beginning with your carrier client or TPA and your policyholder client, I think is a good idea, because it's hard to be a good financial steward if you've got 3 groups or 3 people, right? And they're all kind of going toward a different result, or what they think the right result is. And so keeping those lines of communication open, setting that stage early on, and then also being willing to pivot, right? We know information changes as claims go on in their life cycle. So being willing to say, is the goal that we set out at the beginning still the goal that we're trying to execute toward? And if it's not, right, making those adjustments. And I think that that's being really a good, financially responsible, right?
Yeah. I mean, things can change, right? Like you can get new information that can change the course of what you're doing or your exposure that you're looking at. Like I recently had a file that we were looking at it from one angle, and then all of a sudden we got hit with these new, like a whole new medical angle that the plaintiff's own attorney didn't know about until we got hit with it. But it did change like our evaluation of it, because it's like, okay, now this was a nuisance value. Now this has kind of changed to be a little bit bigger because of this extra information that, we learned of, 6-7 months in, that even her own attorney was unaware of, which is always fun. That's always a great thing to report on. Like, surprise, we have a surprise.
Yes.
Well, and I don't know if you're seeing this as well, but you talked about timeliness, which is so important, right? That we need to get you the information in a timely basis so you can do what you need to do with the information that we provide. But I feel like recruitment and retention is such a big issue right now, not only in the law firms, but also in the insurance companies. And we're kind of like bursting at the seams. And so trying to get those timely reports out becomes a challenge because people are just, they're so overwhelmed. So I don't know if you're seeing that that's becoming a greater issue for you as well.
I think it is. I think it's an industry-wide issue. I know in speaking, and you and I, Jen, were recently at the Litigation Management Symposium and really hearing from law firms about this is just continuing to ramp up as an increasing challenge in the industry. It's certainly a challenge we have in insurance. It feels like it might be a little worse on the law firm side at the moment, on the defense side, but it's tough. And so not only do you have that issue of like, how do I get to all my work? How do I get my work done in a timely manner? But then you have the issue of turnover, where you may have reported timely to, maybe the first claim handler, for example, or the lawyer who had the file to begin with, maybe had certain opinions. And now maybe that file has changed ownership, whether it's at the adjuster level, at the claim, or at the attorney level. And now you've got new parties involved who have, maybe they see things a little bit differently, or they're playing catch up. They're trying to get caught up on those materials that were submitted timely, but now they're running a little behind. So it is definitely something that I think team members on both sides need to just really be diligent about. They need to exercise a little bit, of patience, grace, forgiveness, all of that. And while still just trying to aspire to perform at a high level to the best that we all can, given just business realities, right?
Yeah. And how is it with at your company, or what you're seeing trends in the insurance industry as far as being able to kind of recruit new talent in? And I know that we talked a few minutes ago about how there are programs out there at colleges that are training people who want to go into the industry, but I don't know if there's still enough people who are being trained and who want to come in. So is it difficult for you as well?
Certainly. And I think when you look across insurance, it also varies by discipline. So what we see from a lot of the insurance programs, whether it's the risk management programs, they all kind of have a little bit different names. We see a lot of individuals go into those programs who want to become underwriters, or they want to become producers, right? They want to work at the agency. We see fewer people who go into it with the intention of becoming a claims professional. And so even with some of those programs, at least on our side of the house, we don't see as much interest from those. I think that, we could talk, probably we could have our own episode, right, about talking about the reputation of the insurance industry and why that may deter certain individuals from being interested in it. So there's a reputational kind of evolution or refinement that I think needs to take place. And I think that is impacting it. But when I think about the types of majors, for example, that I think lend themselves really well to being claims professionals, I think about people who go into criminal justice, for example, or psychology or communication. I think about what are the things, like I want claims professionals who are naturally curious. I want claims professionals who are good communicators, thoughtful communicators. I want folks who want to make connections between pieces of information that may not seem immediately or initially related or connectable to one another, if you will. Those are skills that I think are often held, pre-law, for example. I think those are skills that are often held by team members or people who maybe went to school for those things. And just because they went to school for criminal justice, maybe they thought they were going to be a police officer, they changed their mind, or, they just are interested in it generally, but they weren't really sure what they were going to do when they got out of school. I think those majors make great claims professionals. And I think we need to think differently about how we kind of target folks in colleges, and also folks who maybe are not going in a traditional 4-year degree path. What other fields, what other jobs do people have that really lend itself well to claim adjusting? And we need to be more resourceful when it comes to recruiting those folks from different places.
Yeah.
And how do you do that, right? Like, I went to school in Connecticut, the land of the insurance companies. And if not for one of my friends who was going to be an actuary, I would have had no idea that any of these jobs even exist, right? And so people in companies weren't coming to the school. They weren't kind of telling us about claims and how fun and exciting claims can be and how you should get a career in claims. But are the companies out there doing that now?
I suspect it's a mixed bag. So what I hear when I speak with colleagues across the industry, right? I go to a conference or something, or I go to, a leadership or, claims leadership type conferences and things. What I'm hearing is one of the things, as we all, again, try to be good financial stewards of the resources that we have at companies, training programs and those really, really robust training programs that used to exist. And I have some colleagues who literally grew up in those programs, right? I have a colleague that works with me now who, he, I think, went to a program that was put on by the Hartford back in the day, where it was, it was multi months. They would, go to the headquarters, they go back out to the field. Like it was this very robust, very structured program that kind of anybody that went to work for some of these companies back then, they all had a similar experience. Those training programs in a lot of companies have fallen by the wayside. They are expensive. I think they're worth the money, but they're very, very expensive. The other thing that we're seeing is, in order to recruit people at, college or outside of college, but really people at the beginning of their career who do not come with any amount of meaningful insurance experience, you have to have those programs, or the amount of, I guess, pressure that you put on, say, frontline leaders to train someone from scratch while they're trying to manage an entire team is too much to bear, I think, in most cases. So if you don't have those training programs, I think going to, say, a college career fair or a community career fair where you're recruiting somebody with no experience at all is sort of difficult, if not impossible, because you're then recruiting people to an organization where you are not going to be prepared to set them up for success. And then that is a waste of resources for the company. It's a waste of time and effort, and maybe a lot of heartache, right, for the new team member that joins. You don't want to put them off to insurance or put them off to your company because you weren't prepared to do the training and development necessary. So I think if and until companies or some other entity, and there are, many, right? We think about the CLM as a great example of an industry organization, claims exchange, places like that, who are really willing and able to invest in these more robust programs. We're really training people from, minute one. I think it's difficult to find that talent and bring that talent into the industry on a long-term basis.
That's really interesting. I never thought of it that way. We actually just talked about that, I think, on the last episode, that so many of the people we're interviewing started at these large companies that had these multi-month training programs and kind of got their feet wet, grew up in that company, and then moved. And I don't know if it's this knew, like my parents had the same job essentially their entire lives. And that's just kind of what the former generation did. And I don't know if it's just not worth investing in the training when people leave after 2 years, if that's kind of what happened, if it was, but it's just really, really interesting because I do feel like that was kind of like the cornerstone of the insurance industry is you go into these big, huge carriers and you learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you bring up a great point, right? There are companies that will say that. They'll say, listen, we had this great program. We spent all this money on it. We train people. And then after, 2 years, they leave. And so we're just paying to train them for another insurance company. Yeah. And I absolutely understand that. We used to have a great training program with our organization. And, there were people who stayed and there are people who they stayed a few years and then they would leave and they'd go somewhere else. And maybe this is very like idealistic pie in the sky, but I think we have to think about it because it is getting pretty serious in the industry. I think we need to think about it as we're part of an ecosystem as opposed to we're just training people for our own staff and that is all we care about. I think we have to think about how we're training people so that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, as an industry, we're better off. We have people who were trained in a proper way, who really kind of got the right messaging and the right understanding and the right basics from minute one. And yes, of course, ideally, hopefully you're creating an organization where people come and they don't ever want to leave. But I also appreciate there are things, even in amazing organizations, where people come or go because maybe every organization only has so many roles and so much leadership, right? So sometimes you have to leave in order to get that experience somewhere else. But I think we do need to kind of think about it more as an ecosystem as opposed to just how do we serve our individual organization in that moment or over the next, short life cycle, 2 to 5 years.
Well, I think that would also help what you were talking about before, like the reputational issues that can be the title of an entirely other podcast. But I think if the companies kind of came together and united, like the Plain does, it really could help boost just the messaging, right? The messaging that we're telling to people, because I don't think so many people who we talk to go into insurance because they want to help people.
Yeah.
Right. But then as a whole, I think America doesn't think that they think that they're here to cut people and, we're going to give you the least amount of money you can. Like they don't understand what really happens in the inner workings of the insurance company. And our messaging is wrong. The messaging is all wrong.
You're 100% correct in that the messaging is wrong. And we also have, a group of or another side of the industry, I guess you'd say, who has no problems messaging things the way that they see the world. You sit at home during the day if you're ever sick and you turn on the TV, right? All day long, the messaging is the insurance company is the worst. They're out to get you. They're never there to be helpful to you, all of these things. And, like any industry, there are probably insurance companies who are or even individuals or individual cases at insurance companies where that behavior was displayed, right? It happened somewhere to somebody. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my God, every claim is handled perfectly and nobody ever, everybody always gets what they want in the end. But one of the things that we have a program at our company for new employees, and it's for all the company, right? It's a company-wide, it's not a claims department specific issue. And one of the things that I do when I'm invited to speak to those individuals, I especially speak to those team members who are in sort of, I will call them the non-insurance specific disciplines like IT, HR, financial services, right? Where maybe they came from a totally different industry to come work for us. And I always remind them that insurance truly in the United States is the backbone of our economic system. If you had to keep enough money in the bank every day of your life in case your house burned down, what would you be able to spend your money on? Nothing, right? I mean, for most of us, our home is our biggest investment. And so if we had to set enough money aside in the bank that if my home burned down tomorrow, I could pay to replace it myself, I wouldn't be grocery shopping and I wouldn't be paying electric bills and I wouldn't be going on vacation and I wouldn't be sending a kid to college, right? All of these things that families and people do that create jobs for all of us. wouldn't happen if it weren't for insurance.
Right.
Insurance is a noble profession. We are not going to get it right every day, just like no industry, no business gets it right every single day. But I think if we start to conceptualize it and remind others of really the role that we play in the economy and in business security and in personal security, that for families, I think that is the message. And it's true. It's not a stretch. I'm not spinning it. I'm not making it up. It's the reality of what the insurance industry does to make us all able-bodied participants in the economy, right? Because we're able to rely on having something when the absolute worst thing goes wrong, which is what insurance is there to do.
Yeah. But one thing I wanted to circle back to too is about the training too, because the issue with letting go of training is then what's happening, right? Are we having these claims professionals that don't have this robust training program, so they're kind of learning on the go, so to speak? And not to say that each individual company doesn't have their own training, but if we're losing these giant training programs in fear that, oh, we're just going to train them and they're going to leave, now we're having all these professionals out there that they don't have this robust training, and they kind of just again learning as they go, and that's at a huge loss as service to the insureds and as an industry as a whole. I do think there needs to be, like as you said, like look at it as an ecosystem that we are, regardless of where someone may or may not move thereafter, like you're upstanding the reputation of the industry, even though the reputation always isn't great, but we're trying to improve that, right? But the first way to improve it though is to keep the professionals knowledgeable and experienced in their jobs. Otherwise it's going to get messy.
Well, and I think that it assumes that person will never come back to you, right? Like, we have, and we call them boomerang employees. I think other places do too, or whatever people call them, right? But that assumes that just because someone leaves, they're never going to come back. And we have a lot of team members who have come back. We've had some who have left maybe for their first leadership role that we just, at that time, we didn't have available for them because maybe, all the seats were full, so to speak, or whatever you want to say. And then as soon as a job opens up, right, that maybe they went out and got some different experience and they come back, we have those team members come back. And then you think about, well, had you invested in the training? Yeah, maybe they went somewhere else, but then they come back. So you are getting a return on your investment. The other thing that you're getting is no insurance company, and I'm kind of chuckling to myself because I'm sure there's some insurance company out there that would say the way we do it's perfect and we don't care how anyone else does it. But for most of us, right, we say to ourselves, listen, we think we do it pretty well, but what would it be like if somebody works somewhere else and then they come to us and we get the benefit of that knowledge or experience, whether it's good or bad? It might be something that company did that was amazing and we want to try to do something similar at our company. It might be like, wow, they did this really badly. We want to make sure we never do it that way at our company. And I think that it's, again, that cross-pollination, if you will, of ideas and ways of doing things and approaches that make it ultimately a better experience for our policyholders. They are obviously the customer. They are, why we exist. And we get the benefit of that sometimes when people move around a little bit, even though that can be very, very painful in the short term.
Yeah. I mean, the same can be said for law firms. Like, look, we invest a lot of time, and as Jen knows, because she's integral to the process, in training newer attorneys or newly brought on attorneys. Not necessarily they're great. Not all of them are greenness out of the school, but attorneys that come in, we try to train to practice the way that we believe serves our clients the best. And if we didn't do that in fear that, oh, we're going to train them and spend the time and the resources doing it so that they're going to leave, we'd be doing ourselves a disservice anyway. So, and yeah, people do sometimes leave. It happens for a variety of reasons, and they often come back. Look, Jen came back.
Yeah, I worked at this firm before. This is where I worked before I went into claims, and now here I am.
See, and you came back. I mean, how much better of a lawyer are you that you went to be an insurance or, you know, work at an insurance company. I mean, I would suspect, I don't know, I would suspect, at least in your own mind and your own heart, you feel more confident. Would that be true?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Because now I get to kind of understand. I mean, you know, you get to understand the other side too, right? It helps the relationship go so much better because I know what the claims professional needs and wants from me and why and how I can provide it to them. Right. And then from even as, you know, as an attorney, I mean, we joke that like sometimes I have to put my claims professional hat on, but then sometimes you have to take it off, put your lawyer hat back on, and knowing kind of like how to go back and forth. But it just makes you, I think, more well-rounded as any other experience does, just as you were saying, right? The people who go and work in another company and then they get different experience and you might be able to come back and say, hey, I learned how to do this and we did it this way and it was great, or no, not so much. So I think there's no such thing as bad experience or bad learning. I mean, Meghan and I are both products of a Jesuit education. So we're all about the learning for the sake of learning, right?
Yeah.
But one thing though that I think is a huge benefit to like for Jen, especially like being in claims and coming back, like she actually knows what a claims desk looks like, and what, you know, not that every claim system is the same, but like to me that's a foreign concept. Like I don't, but she's actually seen it and kind of knows how things come in and how they're processed. And like even as simple as a settlement check, I remember I had an issue not so long ago getting a settlement check issued, and I called Jenna and she's like, well, you know, I'm like, how does it work on the back end, you know? and since she's been there and she knows how it works, and she's like, I can't speak for every company, but this is how it worked for me at this company. And you know, it just having that knowledge is very, very helpful.
For sure.
So, you know, one thing I wanted to talk to you about that has nothing to do with claims, but I just saw it on your LinkedIn profile and I was just interested, and I don't think you do it anymore, but you were an adult swim instructor. Were you a swimmer? Like, and I asked because my daughter's a swimmer, so I have this affinity to swimmers, but I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, no. So I, you know, I mean, growing up, I loved being in the water. I was like high school, college, I was not a swimmer. Interestingly, I always like to tell the story of my grandfather, spent time in the Navy. He was not a, you know, career military person, but he did spend some time in the Navy. And so, I remember being quite young and, you know, little life jacket age or whatever you want to say, and being at the pool, and, you know, he's like, okay, today you're going to learn how to swim. And he unbuckles my, you know, life jacket and he walks me to the end of the pool, the deep end of the pool, and he just throws me in. And I know that like other people have had this experience too, right? I tell this story and people are like, oh yeah, my dad did that, or my uncle or my mom, or, you know, whoever. But, and, you know, he's just standing on the deck being like, swim. You're like, oh, that's not how you teach someone to swim. Fortunately, I did not drown and I was not scared of water after that experience. But I think that as an adult, I guess I would say, and I'm an adult onset swimmer, I came to swimming through triathlon. And so I really got involved in doing a lot of swimming course in the pool for training and then open water. But one of the things that I was really passionate about is water safety and making sure that people feel like they can be safe in water. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to swim a triathlon, right? Or swim in an open water race. It could be something as simple as, you know, going into the ocean, right, with your kids or your grandkids when you're on vacation or something like that. I let it expire recently, but I also was a certified lifeguard. And so for triathlons, I would often be out in the water as a lifeguard, you know, on a paddleboard or in a kayak, right, making sure that the swimmers were safe. And so I ended up getting my certification to be an adult learn to swim instructor, which is a program offered through U.S. Masters Swimming, which is a national organization. And I love working with water shy adults. I'm not as interested, I guess, just as on a personal level of like maybe saying like somebody comes and they're already a beginner swimmer and they want to become, say, a better swimmer, or they want to become a faster swimmer. There are a lot of coaches who are really, really good at that, and they should absolutely work with those coaches. I'm somebody who, I would say almost all of my students we spent the first 1 to 2 sessions together just getting in the pool. Like they are afraid of water, right? And so working with them, and how do you get your face in the water? And how do you, then move into water that's above your head that you can't touch? And a lot of them would come to me and say, I had one, I just want to be able to go in the ocean with my grandkids, or I'm getting ready to go on a vacation with my fiance to the Caribbean, and I'm scared of getting in the water, and I want to not be scared to get in the water. Or, my, family member has a boat, but I'm afraid to walk down the dock because what if I accidentally fall in, or what if I fall off the side of the boat? What happens? I was there to really teach people how to be safe until maybe rescue could come, right? They could be thrown a ring or a buoy or whatever. And so it was very, it was a very meaningful, and I look forward to the day when I have more time and I can get back to it. I had one student who we had gotten into the deep end, and finally in our last session, I let her go, and we were both treading water in the deep end, and she's crying, and then I start crying, and we're both crying because she's so happy and proud of herself that she could do it. And I think, learning things as an adult, anybody who's tried to learn something new as an adult, it's harder than when you're a kid.
Yes.
And so it takes a lot of bravery to just say to yourself, I'm going to try this new thing. I'm going to try this scary thing, getting in water over my head. And really loved it. Very rewarding experience. And I, like I said, I do look forward to maybe doing it again someday. So.
And I love that too, that you're focused on the adults too, because there is the fears build, I think, more as you get older. So it's a harder barrier to break through. Yeah. Yeah.
The things to be afraid of as you're an adult, right? You watch the news, you work for an insurance company, right? You learn all the things that can happen, and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know to be afraid of that. Now I am, right? And whereas kids very blissfully, wonderfully, often don't know the things to be afraid of, which is why they can be brave and do so many things that some of us as adults get a little bit scared about doing.
And are you still doing triathlons?
So I have not done a triathlon since probably, it's been a few years, probably been 4 or 5 years since I've done a triathlon. I still run, and I still try to do swimming, right? I do some swim races and swim events. I do have a friend who actually really wants to do her first triathlon next year. And so she has asked me to come out of retirement and do that with her. So I may do one next year. But, also sometimes life gets busy. And I think that's the important thing about hobbies is being, at least for me, forgiving myself a little bit if maybe a year or two goes by and I don't do this thing I used to do, and realizing that, it's not going anywhere. I can come back to it.
Yes.
And kind of giving myself a little bit of grace, because, you can't do it all. I like to think I can. It's not true. The older I get, the more I'm willing to come to grips with that fact. But it is, so maybe I will, but it's been a while.
It's so hard to give yourself grace. And I think as an adult, we have to be so much more mindful of it. I am really, really like to work out and lift weights. And I hurt my shoulder 2 weeks ago. And it was a real struggle to be like, I'm taking 2 weeks off. Yeah. And I'm not going to lift. And it's hard, right? But then it's because when you're younger, you're like, you're fine, whatever. But now you get into your 40s, and I'm like, I see my friends going to get surgery because they didn't take a rest, and they're now tore their rotator cuff, or they hurt their knee. And it's just, it's such a weird mindset that you can't just plow through anymore. You actually have to be like, okay, I'm going to rest, or it's okay, I haven't done this in a while, I can come back to it. It's
or you could be like me, that I took a rest from lifting out of laziness, and then I revisited it. I'm like, man, I can't walk. And that was this weekend. And I was complaining to my soon to be 13-year-old, and as we've discussed, they are not subtle in how they feel. And she just looked at me with the biggest side eye as we're walking into her swim practice. She's like, I don't want to hear about your legs. I don't care. She's like, my legs hurt way more than yours. I was like, yeah, but you're 12.
Yeah. Yeah. You just sit down for 5 minutes, have a cookie, and you're like, that's not the way it works when you're in your 40s or older. So yeah.
No, I need a foam roller. I need some protein powder after I work out. It's insane.
Yes.
But I don't know. Some days I think to myself, I would love to have a goal, like a triathlon, but the swimming actually is what scares me. I can swim, I can float in water and but I can't do actual strokes. Like I don't think
Yeah.
I'd be able to handle the swimming portion of it.
Well, if you polled most triathletes, you would find that most triathletes' least favorite discipline is swimming. And it's funny because my favorite discipline was swimming. My least favorite was biking. If I never had to ride a bike, I don't want to say like riding a bike, like, oh, I'm, touring a city, like chill, that's fine. But like riding a bike, like in competition, if I never did that again, I would probably be fine. But for most triathletes, they dislike swimming the most or like it the least, maybe is a positive way to say it. And it's scary. It's overwhelming, right? And a lot of people train in a pool. And if you're not getting a lot of open water swimming, that is can be a very anxiety provoking thing when you're in it for the first time with 1,500 of your closest friends who are kicking and punching and trying. It is. So it's you really do. It's a skill to practice, not even just swimming, but swimming in open water and swimming with other people. For sure.
Swimming in open water is like a whole other like can of worms. Like
there's no line on the bottom of the lake.
Right? No, and there's other things in there.
Oh yes, critters, algae. Yeah, who knows? Yeah. So.
Like I always joked, I'm like, I'd do a triathlon if it was at a country club. Like maybe run around the golf course, ride your bike around the golf course, and then go swim in the pool.
There you go. They do. If you look, and especially early season triathlons, sometimes they do have pool triathlons. Where you kind of swim like a snake up and down every lane in the pool and you get out. So, that's, I guess I would say for listeners who are tri-curious and want to get into it a little bit, they do exist. Just look for them in your local community, especially if you maybe have a YMCA or something. Sometimes places like that or large gyms will have those and you can try it. But open water is where it's at. There's much more room for everyone to spread out and swim.
Safety wise, it's a little bit better. Yeah, you're not going to get. You probably still will get clobbered in the head with someone's foot, but it's less likely than in a pool.
Yeah, the key is to seed yourself appropriately, right? Like sometimes you'll see people that are like, well, I want to be at the front, and it's like, no, why don't you swim with the people who are at whatever your speed is, fast, slow, medium, whatever, and you're going to swim as fast as you're going to swim. So even if you end up passing people, like you're going to be fine. So I think it's just knowing your ability, right? And planning accordingly.
Yes. Yeah.
We were in Lake Placid this summer and we were there right before they had their triathlon. And so we saw we saw people swimming on the lake, and because they were trying to get everyone to stay kind of closer to shore, and they wouldn't let you take kayaks out just to let the swimmers be safe. And just watching that, it was like, I barely went into Lake Placid past my knees. I mean, let alone like, I don't know. Maybe I'm joining Meghan in the country club triathlon.
I have a good friend who's like, she does Ironmans and ultras. And I remember I had lunch with this a few years ago. I had lunch with her in Philly, and she was planning out her route home to the shore because she was riding her bike after lunch to the Jersey Shore. I'm like, you're crazy. I was like, it's Wednesday.
It's like, when are you going to get your training in though? Right.
I know.
Those longer distances. It's like, it takes hours and hours of training. So she's probably figuring, man, I'll actually get to, do something else with my evening if I can ride my bike wherever tonight or home or whatever.
I get it. Like I used to run marathons and I would do the same thing. I'd be like, okay, I'm done with work. I'm going to run home because it's a, 12-mile run home, but I'm long retired from that. And then when I had lunch with her, I was also long retired, and I think she still does it, but I was like, I'm going to go back to my office, and digest this food that I just ate. I couldn't imagine getting on a bike and riding to Jersey Shore from Philadelphia.
There you go.
Well, Kimberly, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, but I don't want to let you go without asking you this. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self?
I think I would encourage myself to cut myself a little bit more slack. And I also think that when you're younger, there's this, at least for me, there was this great urgency about everything, right? Like, well, if I'm not doing this by this, then I've failed and I'm never going to do it. And right. I'm not at this job, or I'm not at this salary, or I'm not at this, or I'm not at that. Or if it's not a promotion and it's only a lateral move, what does that mean? Et cetera, et cetera. So I think from a career standpoint, giving yourself some grace. Number two, it's rarely as urgent as you think it is. I mean, obviously we all have deadlines and things like that, but when we think about sort of the span of our career from beginning to end, you do have a lot of time, and this, sense, don't beat yourself up to say, well, I didn't do that thing by X age. And by the way, whatever arbitrary thing that you made up, I mean, you probably told it to yourself. And so I think giving yourself a little bit of a break, and I would have been well served to do that. I think I probably had anxiety and pressure and some heartache that maybe I could have lived without, had I just been a little more realistic and a little kinder to myself.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to do that. And that's certainly true when you're younger. And frankly, could be true when you're older too. So just give yourself a little bit of a break. Usually high achievers, always err on the side of busting their own chops a little too much, and they think, well, if I take my foot off the gas, no, you're probably going to be fine. It's probably fine.
Yeah, and and it forces you to enjoy the journey too, and not be so focused. Like, while there should be a goal, right? But you should enjoy your path there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're not going to enjoy what you've earned for yourself a little bit, what is the point? So you sort of need to also practice being a little more present. I think that's advice that I can still remind myself to take from every once in a while. I need to be more present and just appreciate what I've done and what I've earned, and not be so worried about what's next.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fantastic advice for yourself and for everyone listening as well. So, Kimberly, as I said, it's such a pleasure having you on. Of course, for everyone listening, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep. You can find us on your favorite streaming platform. And you should look at this one on YouTube so you can get a glimpse at Kimberly's office, because it's gorgeous. So thanks for tuning in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.